and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, welcome everyone to a little different configuration, but why not? It's Christmas. So, well, not quite yet, but we're getting there. So we will have a work session tonight, but before we do that, we will get to a few items, one of which is the modification of the agenda if we do indeed want to do that.
I'd like to add one item if I could. Let's see, it'll be under, let me scroll to it. So it's going to be under school district business. It would be item C, and a further discussion of new routes and the charter school institute.
Very good. All right, we will get to that after our one policy. And so we're going to go ahead and proceed. And opportunity for the public and staff to speak to us. And Adam Piasecki did sign up.
Good evening.
Oh, there's that.
I'm sorry.
There you go. No, there you go.
There's a spot open. Good evening. As we know, teachers work very hard everywhere, especially here in Ithaca. And we need to remember to take the time to acknowledge all of the work that they do. We get so caught up in the daily happenings. We have an elementary teacher in the district who has gone through the long, rigorous process of earning National Board certification. Randy Beckman has completed that. She's a first grade teacher at Bell Sherman. So when you see her, just congratulate her on that process. It's a great thing to have here in our district and have teachers that are members of ITA holding that National Board certification. Randy is currently on sabbatical leave. So speaking of sabbatical leaves, last Monday, this room had amazing things happening. The sabbatical committee listens to presentations all day long. Every single presentation had something that was just phenomenal as to what it would bring in for teachers and students here in the district. Decisions are hard to make, but the committee of teachers and administrators did make some recommendations, and you will be receiving an email tomorrow from Danielle. We'll be working with Danielle from the ITA office, and you'll be seeing the project, the proposals that are being put forward to you so people can go on sabbatical next year. These sabbatical projects result in courses that are being taught in the secondary schools. They result in things that we're still hearing about years later that have taken on new heights, like Love Those Letters. This is amazing work being done by teachers, for teachers, that's benefiting students here in Ithaca. And lastly, I met with Kate Patterson so that we can work on having a link off of the staff tab so that all of these wikis and websites and electronic documents that are being created are accessible through the website, not just the teacher's website. So me and Kate will be working on that, so you'll be able to see all of those. So we're working on that for you. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Anyone else wish to speak? Okay, very good. We'll move on. Student reps. Rosie.
Hi.
How are you? Go ahead.
So senior teams have been meeting, and the senior teams are a part of our graduation by exhibition at ACS, and the senior team that I'm on just today released a survey for alumni, which will be able to collect data about alumni and use that for possible internships and to figure out what our graduates do after high school. So that's really fun to watch and be a part of. The solstice dinner solstice lunch is happening on Friday, which is a tradition, an annual tradition that we have before break, where we all celebrate with a potluck together. And recently our all-school meetings have been talking about bullying, and we are kind of transitioning into talking about race and discrimination. And tomorrow we will be continuing that discussion and hope that we will further that discussion.
Our site-based council met last Thursday, and one of the things we do is we have a small amount of funds that we allocate to various people who request them, and in the past, not many people have requested funds, but this year we had, I think, over double the number of funds requested as we did to allocate. and it was just really cool to see it with students, staff, all sorts of people with interesting projects that they wanted funding for, and that was a really cool process to be a part of, and it's all decided by consensus at our site-based council, so everyone who was there got a say of where the money would go, and that was just a really cool process. And then last Tuesday, we had a pasta dinner, which is an annual event, and it's a fundraiser for ACS, and I think it was our biggest turnout yet, so we raised a lot of money, and we had a lot of food, and it was a great event. And that is all.
Very good. Thanks, LACS. Ithaca?
So the Link Crew food drive that I mentioned last weekend will be ending this Thursday, and all the food that we have collected will be donated to help families that don't have meals for the holidays be able to have a nice holiday meal. Regular decision deadlines for colleges are quickly approaching, most of them starting the first of the upcoming year. The first varsity hockey home game is this Friday at Liner Rink at 7:30. I welcome you all to come. Students and teachers are anxiously awaiting the winter break coming up next week. There is a new lecture series starting in the upcoming year about STEM subjects, and that will be located in each courtyard. I have to find out some more information about that, but it sounds exciting. And the IHS band and orchestra concerts were last week in Culp Auditorium, and they both received rave reviews.
The 5 weeks just ended last Friday. In student council news, representatives from all of the social studies classes will be voted on, and there will be meetings held during school, so everyone in all of the social studies classes will be learning more about what is going on in our school. The Regents exam schedule has been released, so students can now begin to prepare for those, and our school announcements, which have typically been held over the loudspeaker, will now be delivered in video form once a week, so that's a great new change for our school. College early decision and early action notifications were released this past weekend and yesterday. And then winter sports teams have finished the Adopt a Family program, which is run through the Salvation Army, which helps families in need, so that's a really great thing to reach out to the family. Please.
All right. First of all, I would like to say how elated I am to be the new boarder from the high school. My name is Connor Coots. The second ever student-directed and produced one-act plays took place on December 5th and 6th. This board should truly be proud of all the actors involved and also the crew and directors. This was 100% student-produced, and the talent of Ithaca High School students truly was present. Students who had neither previously acted nor attended a theatrical performance were present, so this was truly a beneficial effort that will continue to flourish successfully. On Friday, December 13th, Ithaca High School celebrated a very successful crafts fair filled with food, selling, and general merriment. Various clubs and other groups sold goods, in most cases food, to students and staff during all periods. The gaming club will be taking a respite from their normal Monday card/board games and will begin to focus their attention on the creation of a board game for both Global 1, Honors, and Regents classes that will embody ancient civilizations. Upon the conclusion of the game's construction, it is planned that the game will be used in Global 1 classes. The Avid 10 class recently traveled to Ithaca College and participated in a service project with students from Brooklyn. The students also met with their Ithaca College mentors. The Avid 12 class journeyed up to TC3 to take a college placement test called AccuPlacer. The English and Digital Media class is in the midst of creating a TV magazine format show wherein they interview members of the school and local community. On November 23rd, the Fashion Club produced a fashion show where student designed and in some cases made, that's right, made, clothes that were displayed as well as local clothes from local vendors. Only here's the catch. 5 minutes before the show was set to go on, a boiler room mishap occurred, causing the fire alarm to sound, and the entirety of the audience members and participants were forced to stand out in the cold for 1 hour. 1 might think that this hindrance caused the show to be canceled. On the contrary, the show went on and was a success. Advisor Deb Casey was thoroughly impressed with the club members for such perseverance and success. And more importantly, they were proud of themselves. 2 weekends ago, the Ithaca High School Brain Team hosted a multi-state competition in the high school cafeteria. And not only did they host, but they won the entire tournament. This enables them to participate in 4 national competitions all around the country. Congratulations are in order. The health classes have acquired new babies that are toy babies with battery-operated emotions that cry, burp, have dirty diapers, and require food, just like a real child. Previously, the health classes used eggs as methods of teaching responsibility over something, but now use toy babies that are more realistic and exciting for the students involved.
Great. I do have one more thing to add. There is a senior by the name of Osaba Erwele, and he has put together what he calls the Pencil Project, and he's collecting pencils and pens and other school supplies and all throughout the school, and he's going to send them to schools in South Africa that he's been working with. So I think it's going through, I believe, the end of this week, so if you have any extra pens or pencils lying around, we suggest that you put them in one of the boxes around the high school. It would be greatly appreciated.
Great. I don't even know where to start. Board response is probably a good idea because I probably shouldn't say anything. So go ahead, Brad.
I'm going to say welcome to the new member. I look forward to future narratives. And I want to say to the principal of the high school, I'm glad to hear that general merriment is still part of going to high school. I like to hear that, so that's great.
And I thought that just was old school stuff. But anyway. Connor, we'll just move on. And any other comments?
I didn't catch your last name. I got the first name.
Coots.
Got it.
And that's not our fault either. So and Connor, you will have your own name tag at some point, and Danielle will take care of that.
Thank you.
So we will always know where the comments are coming from. Anyway.
Yeah, and they're good.
Yeah, that's right. Well, appreciate the preparation and the conversational tone.
Yeah.
We'll move on. Anything else? Seth, you got anything? You all right?
I'm great. I'm sitting next to Connor. I'm good.
We look forward to Hockey Friday night. We're able to see basketball last Friday night for some game. Yeah. That was a nice comeback win. Saw the orchestra that last week as well. A lot of talent on display throughout the district. Feel free to catch it. Choral concert is Wednesday, but there's also basketball Wednesday as well.
Midsummer Night's Dream, was it DeWitt?
Cinderella at Boynton, I believe, correct?
Right,
So it's a lot going on. So it's a good time of year. So consent agenda.
I'll move the consent as presented.
Second by Pat, who was quicker than Judy. Any questions?
We were waiting.
There was an early finance committee meeting, I believe. Did you guys have it?
Yeah, we had 8 o'clock in the morning. Yeah.
Did you get a quorum?
We did. Yes. Under protest. Yeah. Chris protested, but he was there.
What about Seth?
Sean.
Excuse me.
He protested by arriving a little later.
Okay. All right. So there is one bid. It's for musical instruments.
And if you go to consideration of accounts, you can see the bids.
All right.
Yeah.
If there's any questions regarding that, but slightly confusing if you do look at it, but I'm sure it's as it should be.
Yep.
Okay. That was about the only thing that I saw that anyone might have a question on. But if there's no questions, all in favor?
Aye.
That's everyone that's here, I should say. Sean and Eldred are absent. And Dr. Brown, I'm not sure how you can top Connor, but this is your opportunity to give us your few minutes.
I'm trying to comment is better than me tonight. I love the tie and shoe. So thank you for this time. And he mentioned many of the items I had on my list. We would like to highlight again the digital media studio usage. More and more programming is coming out of that studio. Good stuff. We thank you, Ms. Ainsley, for being on the Inside ICSD with Dr. Brown show. We're hoping those shows will continue, and I look around the room, I'm hoping to invite some folks to be on that show in the near future to share your thoughts on the work, students and adults. So looking forward to continuing that bi-weekly show. 2 items. I hope Ms. Amanda Berger's in the room. I wanted to have a quick update on safe and caring environments and what we're thinking about as far as our school buildings and what we're doing to make them more safe.
Absolutely. So I think last year we started the conversation with having TST BOCES come in and do sort of an overview study of what at that time they were calling the vulnerabilities of our schools, right? And you know, we would like to think a little bit broader about that. There's been some great information that's already been discovered. They've done some work at Ithaca High School as well as South Hill Elementary, and then we'll be moving on to other schools as well. And our hope is that we'll be looking at all the schools in terms of safety and security for the students and the family members and the teachers that go in and out of those buildings every day. The word sort of vulnerability study never sat well, I think, with any of us, and it sort of made it feel like we weren't safe or we weren't secure, and so we wanted something actually to more represent kind of our vision of excellence. And so we decided at Finance Committee the other day that we would have, much to the chagrin of some, an acronym, sort of, right term, right, Chris, I know. So we went with Safe Environment, Caring Community, and so, or Caring Culture. And so if you see SECC, we're hoping that that would actually be an umbrella term that would not only look at sort of the building environment, the doors, how they lock, you know, the entryways, the lighting, you know, all those things that go into sort of like this idea of vulnerability. But also that would also serve as an umbrella for Dignity Act work as well, some of the social, emotional, and physical well-being programs that we have throughout all our communities. I'm thinking about, you know, some of the bullying work that's being done at some of the schools that we know about, WHAM and FAB and all those wonderful programs that are out there. This would sort of serve as kind of that umbrella term, and from that we would be able to kind of hang things off of that and be able to look at school safety as a whole, as opposed to just kind of this lens of vulnerability. So,
thank you.
You're welcome.
One last piece. Looking back at my notes, last year at this time, we committed to communication, the Board of Education priority around communication, and thinking about what we would do to potentially improve our efforts there. And I listed the things that have happened over the last year. We published the ICSD Insider for the first time, which has been recognized nationally now and statewide. We enhanced our social media presence, so our Twitter feed, our YouTube feed, Facebook site, all things that now we have folks on staff who are being asked to speak about at regional and national events because of our efforts there. The tele-town hall budget conversation we conducted last year, and I forget the number, Danielle, that there was a large number of homes that we connected with last year with that phone call to talk about budget. And we did a community survey this past spring where we asked folks how were they receiving information from our district and how they felt about the communication, and we received a very favorable remarks there. Our most recent attempt to potentially improve our communication efforts is Your Voice survey. So we say, yes, we are committed to listening and hearing from our community and responding to our community. We've recently worked with the EIOC leadership to come up with a draft communication protocol that we're continuing to refine and we're hoping to put in front of you soon. But if we can scroll down, we've recently launched this Your Voice survey, which is a button on our homepage. And often daily, Jenny Bishop and my office and offices across the district, we hear from folks good things, compliments, suggestions, concerns, or just random thoughts. What we haven't done is actually track that data to say to you and say to our community, we hear from folks 2,000 times per day, and we respond 1,000. It's some quantifiable approaches to how we listen and when we listen and what kind of things we're hearing from our community. We want to sort of figure out how to capture that. So we're working with a technology company. We are the first district, I believe, in the country now that has launched a portal like this. It is an online portal for our community. So anyone can go in, and it embeds a communication protocol. So when taking a survey, it may ask you, have you had a conversation with a teacher? Have you had a conversation with the principal? and it would elevate the concern or the compliment or suggestion up the ladder, so to speak. But anyway, all the data is captured. One can provide some comments. One can actually just click on a certain box or certain things for pre-populated comments as well. But an opportunity for anyone and everyone to provide feedback, compliments, suggestions. I keep saying the word compliment because it's not just a place for negativity, which I'm sure we will hear some concerns and things that people feel like they haven't had a voice or a listening ear for. But it is an opportunity for us to capture the good that's happening in the district as well. So I'm saying that to everyone. Use this portal, and we will, in almost every case, we will hope to get back to you based on what we've heard through this site. We're going to try it out. Another way to continue. Just wanted to make sure we launched that. That's it.
Just to, I have gone on the site, just to be clear, there's a survey function, but you can just put in a comment without taking a survey.
Yeah.
Right, you don't go through that process, but it's on that same site.
And I read everyone right now. And we have other folks who get into every comment.
Very good, Dr. Brown. All good?
All good.
Very good. So we will move on to school district business, and the main topic of the night is instructional coaching. And Dr. Brown, we've been arranged in a certain way, but we're going to have a conversation and discussion regarding the instructional coaching model.
I'm hoping you will allow us some time to transition, but we're looking forward to this conversation. It will be a work session type of a format where we're engaging in some conversations with you about what we learned from this initiative, instructional coaching initiative, and hopefully to inform the next steps. So I know some folks are going to be coming to the table. We have some fancy name tags up here too. If you have some talent yours.
Here's your chance to review yourself.
So, gifts from Danielle.
From Danielle. Chocolates to...
Oh, perfect. All right. Perfect.
This is mine.
All right, I think we're ready.
Hey, all right.
I think everyone knows Lydia.
So we're going to get started. Thanks for letting us come to discuss instructional coaching and ICSD. What I'd like to do is first have the people that just joined us introduce themselves, and then I also want to introduce other important players in our instructional coaching program. So Mary Beth, you want to just start who you are and what school you're with?
I'm Mary Beth Mercury. I'm an instructional coach at Caroline. I'm Diane Carruthers. I'm principal at Lehman Alternative Community School.
I'm Ann Carignani, Spanish teacher at Boynton.
I'm Keith Harrington. I'm one of the secondary instructional coaches at DeWitt, Boynton, and OACS.
I'm Carrie Burke. I'm an art teacher at Caroline Elementary School.
Julie Humble. I'm an instructional coach at South Hill.
I'm Kathleen White, and I'm at South Hill Elementary, and I'm in first grade.
And we also have our other coaches with us. So Andrea Renee is there. She's at Enfield. Mike Cesari is there. He's at Northeast. Jan Lori Moran is there. She's a secondary one working with the 3 middle schools. And Kelly Nestler is there. We also have with us principals at schools where we have coaches. We have Mary Grover, Caroline, and Samantha Little at South Hill, and Joe DeHara at Boynton. So we just want a whole crew here, so we have room at the table for some, and we hope that during the discussion everyone will join in and give us some input there. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of background. We started 2 years ago with a year-long development team where we developed this coaching initiative as a district-wide team with teachers, principals, and administrators. We rolled out this initiative last spring with information sessions for pre-K through 5th grade, pre-K through 8th grade groups in different locations. Then this summer, our wonderful newly hired coaches got time with the administrators in the buildings they were going to work in, as well as district administrators involved in, we all had a training with a consultant from Expeditionary Learning. Then this fall, in all of the schools that we have coaches in, teachers got to build some common understanding of what instructional coaching would be through a consistent presentation that the coaches did with the teachers as school was starting. We've continued our training throughout this year for the coaches. We have a consultant working with us from Expeditionary Learning, and we're doing our own training as we meet on a regular basis. And this February, we're going to be bringing that district development team back together to talk about next steps, because we really are going great guns as the beginning of the year. So you may have seen this graphic before if you've talked with me about instructional coaching or seen a coach talk to others about it. We affectionately call it our tumbleweed, because it goes round and round, and we go back and forth within the cycle as we work with teachers. We start at different places. Many times we start at goal setting. A teacher may come to a coach and have a really good idea of a focus, a goal that they want to work on together. Sometimes, however, a coach may start by observing a classroom and seeing the instruction and what the students are doing. And from that, they bring another perspective to choosing a goal and a focus of the work that the teacher and the coach are going to do. That perspective carries over into the learning, the observation, and the reflection as they go through that cycle. The learning part of the cycle really does involve analyzing student work and designing lessons. And we're finding a wonderful parallel from the work that John Antonetti is working at with many teachers across the district. He works from a perspective of, you see the acronym there, reflection, experimentation, analysis, and lesson design. So that's really helping us increase our understanding of this coaching cycle, as well as it's really expanding teachers' understanding of their parallel work in their PLCs. So we're really finding the connections there as we continue this work. More exciting than sort of this background really is the numbers. Since September, coaches have been working in 2 to 8 week cycles with over 50 teachers, as well as working with over 16 PLCs. They've been working with teachers and PLCs in pre-K through 8th grade. And as you can see that's coming up, they have been having coaching goals in many areas. And we're finding that in the fall, these coaching goals tended to focus a lot around classroom management, classroom structure, classroom schedule, as teachers were working on developing routines for students. What we're finding in this second cycle that has just started in the last week or so, and we had a waiting list from the fall cycle that there are teachers that were like, oh, they had to wait because we couldn't accommodate everyone in the fall. We're finding that there is a shift from a focus on that classroom structure to really looking at student work in all these areas. So it's really exciting to see that shift as teachers are really developing their classroom structures. So that's really exciting to see. We're going to move right into letting you see coaching cycles in action. We're going to have a couple of coaches and the teachers that can just speak very briefly, give you an introduction, and then we really want you to ask questions so that we don't speak too long. We're also going to give you principals' perspective of how things are going, and we really want you to join in at any time. And I'm going to let Mary Beth set up this very short clip.
So Carrie and I have been working together this year. Carrie came in with a very strong goal from her work with the art integration. She's been working in 4th grade, and her goal was based on both the art standard you talk specifically to the art standard, but also the ELA standard of comparing and contrasting using details in writing. And so Carrie and I
worked together, established a baseline for where students were, and realized they are nowhere near being able to compare and contrast two pieces of art yet. So we broke it down into a smaller goal for this first 6-week cycle, which was that students can make observations, detailed observations without inference. And we designed a series of lesson plans through that and got more and more successful, as you'll see from the data that resulted. Carrie, do you want to talk about the...
So through integration time that I've been in the 4th grade classroom, I realized that working on persuasive essays and writing was a big piece for 4th graders. And so in the art room, I wanted to focus on standard 3, which is analysis of artwork and being able to talk about it. And so that was being able to compare and contrast, I thought was going to be something relatively easy. And through the process, we kind of had to take a few steps back. And so this is sort of us figuring out how to best reach that goal towards the end of the year.
So what we're doing in this video clip is taking a look at student work and sorting it using a sorting protocol from expeditionary learning, looking at their ability to, we are looking at their ability to, in this case, make an observation without using any inference. It's just a brief clip of sort of an aha moment.
So what do you think about that? Fancy post, a very fancy post.
I mean, I think that maybe is possibly taking it a little bit further. I mean, breaking down in this way is helpful because as much as it's only one thing, they're starting to see what from where we came from, with not getting it at all. And then I see, I think, no longer breaking up those categories, which is too much for them right now. And so being able to take that kind of seeing to the next level is where I'd love to go with this.
Okay.
So I think this is sort of.
So it's interesting you would put them in this cap because I was thinking in this, I interpret fancy as a fancy. So I don't know that when you're fancy, it's not describing it. I don't know. Right. But I see what you're saying. That if they are obviously, well, not obviously. I interpreted it as dressed up.
Right.
Or party. But let's think about that's very interesting.
Okay. Yeah.
Very, very short clip. Under 30 minutes. 30-minute reflection session. So as a result of this work, they have some data to share, and Mary Beth is just going to briefly talk about the outcomes.
Sure. So, like I said before, we split this compare and contrast using data to support their assertions into a very much smaller 2-piece goal, which was the first part is understanding the difference between observation and inference. And again, this goes to the 4th grade ELA modules, and this was at risk of hyperbole, it was astoundingly successful in the art classroom, being able to see a picture and then talk about it and think critically about this. So as you can see, this data shows how they were confused in the beginning. No one had a clear understanding, and I think Carrie and I got better at designing lessons that really hit what we were looking to do. So you can see the jumps toward the end. Again, this is over a 6 to 8 week cycle that shows that most kids have a very clear understanding now. None of them are confusing anymore. So it's really rewarding to see that shift in their thinking.
Hey, Mary Beth, can I ask you a question? Is that the normal learning track we want to, I know Louvelle's talked about that kind of confusion or that struggle or that kind of being lost and then learning. Is that kind of what it should look like and where we want it to go, both from the teacher's point of view and the kids?
In my opinion, this is phenomenal results that you're seeing. I think that this is exactly where you would want to see this going. And I'm not, is the graph not particularly clear, or is this, I wish I could show you some of the thinking that went on that we could have shown the students instead of carrying my time together, because their thinking around it was great. But I think what you're seeing is that, I wish I had the number, I could probably pull the number right up in front.
This is a typical trajectory when you're working with students over, so it's from October to December, and it's building understanding. And I think what you'll see is it's also a typical trajectory of a teacher working to figure out the best way to get kids to that. So Mary Beth said that she and Carrie really worked together to find the best way to get kids to move forward.
Yeah, it was really kind of trying to figure out how to get the students to think for themselves. So I would put this artwork up and we would talk about it, and I would ask them to give me the details, and some of the kids really struggled with just saying, I see a person. They're they're kind of confined to, I want the right answer. And so this was sort of to kind of open them up to take risks and take chances. And so when I look at this data, I see in the beginning they have a real struggle to show that detail, and then the blue is a lot of their inferencing. So they had a lot of inferences, and that started to really grow. But then we broke down how can we break the inferences away from the details and focus on using our details to support our inferences. So for 4th grade, they're doing a lot of research-based papers, and we're finding that information, but what they struggle with is thinking on their own and making those inferences based on supporting details.
So to learn, we want that red, right? I mean, part of learning is that red stuff, right?
Yeah, at the beginning, this is where they are now, and so when we move towards, December 13th, they're not confused. They're able to give me an inference and support it with a detail based on what they are visually seeing. And so when they're in their classroom, hopefully they'll be able to do the same exact thing with text. So to be able to make an inference based on the things that they're finding in the text.
So Seth, are you asking if that's a normal learning curve, or is this an accelerated result from coaching? Is that...
Yeah, and more on the normal side, and is this kind of the typical pattern of learning? You have a kind of confused and then a breakthrough or whatever the term.
Really, I'm typically confused in the beginning. But I think that's...
I think it's a typical pattern, but I do think that it's accelerated. So if you think about this, this is an art class that meets once a week, right? So I would say if...
Some context, right.
Yeah.
Some context that they're not meeting every
Right, they're not meeting every day, working on this every day with Carrie. Now they are working on parallel tasks in the classroom. So this data is from, at most, a weekly check-in, and perhaps even less. So I would say that it is accelerated. Another piece of that is if you saw the original goal underneath the video, it was a much broader goal. And through these reflective conversations, they were able to see, wow, we need to parse that out. We can't just talk about comparing and contrasting. We have to first work on this with the kids. And then I'm going to show you
What was that winnowing down again? I missed that.
So let's see if I can go back to it. So this was the first one?
Yeah.
This is Carrie's year-long goal. And we started with an activity that asked them to compare and contrast two pieces of art. And we looked at that one. And we have some examples I could show you later after you're seeing it. And we looked at it and said, oh, okay, this is the year-end goal, and that's a good thing. And now we have to break it down. And I think if you could go back to that data, Lydia, I think this also is an interesting picture of what learning can do together as colleagues together. That I think you would have seen if we just looked at that compare and contrast goal, that red would stay really high for a long time. Or without being together, thinking this through and having each other to bounce ideas off of. If you look from the fourth to the fifth column, we really got that idea in that next lesson that we did, and the results were really astounding. Use that word again. But that together, without each other's support, I don't think we would have gotten that far. I don't think you would have seen those results from the students, because we really were able to break down that activity, either one of us alone doing that work. It was powerful to do it together.
Yeah, and being able to kind of reflect on that is a really key component to it, because there were times where I was like, I'm never doing that again. But Mary Beth was like, actually, there were great conversations happening where I thought they were maybe off task. They were really just engaged. And it changed the way that we worked in the classroom. And so looking at this data, I mean, I see a large amount of growth for sure.
Whoops. Go ahead, Brad.
Oh, sorry.
Then we had a question from the tower in the back of it.
How does this tie into what's going on in the it was fourth grade in the classroom in ELA? How does this tie into what they're doing there? What's the strand that this is connected to?
So they're working on narratives, and now they're working on persuasive essays and research. And so they're looking for all this information to back up something they're researching, but we're trying to teach them to kind of pull out inferences and be able to support anything with a detail. And so sometimes they struggle with doing that, so this directly relates to that. So hopefully they'll be able to take that with them. And with the integration time that I've been doing inside the fourth grade classroom, we even talk about what we're doing in art to kind of relate what we're doing in writing.
The specific goal is reading for information, and the students will refer to details and examples in a text when drawing inferences from the text. It's really specific.
Great. Thank you.
We have a
Do
question.
you know why there's the weird, funky regression of confusion between bars 3 and 4?
Good question. Yeah, some of the activities that we did, it wasn't always the same assessment that we did. We tweaked it a little bit based on what we were doing. So what we might see is here we were pushing more toward understanding or making your details more robust. And so kids started putting that inference back into their work because we were asking them to go a little bit deeper into the details. So we were doing two things simultaneously in our work with the kids.
I hope that you hear, so there's an undertone here of, although this is about increased student achievement, there's increased teacher understanding of effective instruction from this. And so, like, we didn't measure their, understanding or comfort with this really effective instruction, but I think it would mirror that. Because I think that's the subtext that you guys have. Like, we figured out great ways to get to what we wanted kids to know. There is another graphic that speaks to the same thing with the quality of details, and we can come back to that. I really want to keep going and let you see some other examples of the great work that's going on.
Judy Max, you have a question? Yes. You're good? Go ahead. Go for it.
Okay, so we're going to shift to middle school.
Okay. So Ann Caragnani and I worked together this year, and she came with several ideas about what she wanted to achieve in the classroom, kind of all of them focused around the students and increasing engagement, increasing the meaningful use of technology collaboratively in the classroom, and really maximizing the use of the classroom time. And we put those together into the goal you see up there, that students will remain engaged in interesting activities throughout the classroom period. And then, so what I kind of brought to that is a framework and a schedule for when we were meeting and how we would work together. We talked about that, how many times she would want me to observe in the classroom, and we worked together to decide on what data to collect. And then our indicators for our success were going to be test scores, student behavior, and student participation. So on my side, those are the things that I was looking at, collecting that data and then putting it into tables to share with her on our weekly planning and reflection sessions. And then each week we would go forward from there. And Ann can talk to you a little bit about her perspective on that process.
Well, first of all, I'm here because obviously I think so highly of this program, and I wish other teachers would take part in this, because it's fabulous to have someone else in your classroom observing you, helping you, reflecting with you, etc. So, I mean, we went all over the place, but to know that this is this is a pretty fragile class. These are kids who are really, really at risk for failing, and the importance of this class for them, and yet they come in with all sorts of different levels of ability, and it is truly hard to keep them engaged, because many of them don't like school, many of them have a really hard time in school, had a hard time learning. So it has been amazing to me to watch how, in giving them just a few tools, saying, okay, you know what, you can decide on the vocabulary, and then you can use your technology to look up those words. You can decide what you want to learn, and then having them be not trying to learn the 200 words, perhaps maybe cutting it down, but hoping that they will really learn those words, that they will really be able to speak simple sentences, will be able to interact with each other in Spanish. Also having them become more collaborative, working with each other as opposed to it's all about me. And that's been kind of fun to watch, how they will tell each other, help each other with answers, want to do their dialogues together. And finally, just the use of technology, because as you know, many of us came back to school and there was an Eno board. And we didn't have too much information on how to use that Eno board, but I did not want to use it as my whiteboard, which I had to at the beginning because I had a stylus which would not recognize Spanish, so it would self-correct to English. Very, very annoying. So having Pete there giving me, he would go to the training and he would come back and say, here, let me show you this, let me show you that. Lots and lots of time. So he was just it's like having my private help there in the classroom for technology. So now I do use my Uno board, and I do use my stylus, and it works, and it's very nice. And then we moved on to test anxiety, because then I realized the kids were having these are kids who haven't tested well in the past, and their belief is that they can't do it. And you could see them shutting down, breaking pencils, getting up, yelling and so forth. And we came up with strategies in how to give them some more confidence so that they can become better test takers. Obviously, the proof will be in taking the proficiency exam at the end of the year and seeing whether they do indeed get that credit in Spanish needed for graduation. And it has been an amazing process, and I totally recommend it to everyone.
Go ahead, Chris.
You said that you have many kids coming in at different levels. Did you see during the process, did you see a leveling off of a level setting, or did it stay, because you're going to always have that?
Yeah, because first of all, some of these students had taken French or German last year and failed it, so this is their first year of Spanish, and then the other students are Spanish students but who were not able to pass 7th grade Spanish. So those are the different levels, obviously. And I would say that there's been sort of a general moving up of everyone, but I would think that for the students who were least interested are coming around, possibly a little bit further behind than the others. But I would not say that there's a true leveling off yet. Or I don't know that there will be.
And to piggyback off what Seth said earlier, so I guess what Seth might have been asking was that in result to the differences, the different way you were doing things, and you equate that to that, to a quicker or a more rapid leveling off.
Yes, absolutely. And the changing of a number of things, starting with time management, starting with giving them more of a say in what they wanted to learn and how they wanted to learn it, to using a lot more technology and putting technology into their hands, be it as easy as just getting whiteboards and they all have markers and they can, be showing each other their work and helping each other. So all of these very, very, I think I taught this course, I've always taught it much more teacher-centered because it was my way of making sure that they would behave. And I didn't want to do it that way because that's not my really way of teaching. So it was very nice to see Keith giving me the encouragement to say, we don't have to make it teacher-centered. They can work, but we need to teach them how to do that and do it well.
How does this experience of the coaching model differ from the normal interactions that you had throughout your career with your colleagues, whether in your department or just your teacher colleagues? I mean, it sounds like this is something new to you, but why is it new when you've had colleagues next door and in your department?
Great question. One of the things is that we all teach, due to our schedule, we all teach at exactly the same time. So in order for us to observe each other, we would have to actually take time off, which we are given in our, I know our contract says we should do that, and I think more teachers should observe each other, but we don't tend to because we're not wanting to leave our classes very much, and because the fact that we would have to give our class to somebody else. So there's that. And then the other thing is, yes, now we're starting to do PLC work, but in the past we haven't done that as much. So and we really are very busy, and we don't really spend enough time. And we do a lot of sort of working in your classroom by yourself and reflecting, but it's nice to have someone else to reflect with. And I found my reflection was deeper and better with having someone that many times in my room, that many times taking pictures, showing me data, and making me really go back and think, wow, that was not what I wanted. What can I do to make it better?
If I can interject, I think it's really important what Anne's speaking to is because there's potentially so many aspects of the teaching that we're working with at any given time. There's a lot of variables, and so to try to be able to tell what's working, what's efficient, and what's effective takes a lot of precision, and I think a lot of reflection on both our parts. I know that for me as a teacher, I grew a lot working with Anne as well, and I've really enjoyed that aspect of the coaching, is that it is very much a partnership, and the things that she would develop and come up with and the ideas that she would have were very exciting when you put them in place, and I'd be there to be able to plan very specifically that these are the days when I could come in and observe and really take copious notes to in order to see what was effective and what we should build on.
I guess just to follow up on, I guess your comment, Seth, and your goal for the year, is that significantly different than your goal would be in a year? Is that a typical goal for you? Or?
No, that would be a typical goal, to have students be as engaged as possible. This class just happens to be more challenging in that.
So really, the goal wasn't dramatically different, but obviously the strategies that you used to achieve the goal are certainly different than what you've used in the past. So.
Can I ask one more question? What made you able to go from I think you said teacher focus to student? What made you do that?
Would you like just one example?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're expected to know an enormous amount of vocabulary. So I would have a very prepared vocabulary list that I would have. They would look on the board and they would have all the Spanish words and they would write the English words. And it's sort of mind-numbing how many words that I'm trying to teach them. And Keith came up with the idea, well, what about if they decide the words? Which is a little dangerous, because you know that the test has a lot of words in it and they're not necessarily going to choose those words. But giving them, you know, saying, okay, this is your community, where do you go in your community? What are the places in your community? And they need a little bit of coaching at the beginning, but it was the first time. But they came up with great ideas. And so then they put I had the English, they wrote in the English. They had to then go using technology, pull out their phones whenever, look up the words. Which are the words? And we agreed, we had to agree. Everybody had to be, there are 10 kids in that class, those 10 kids had to agree on those 15 places. And then they were going to use that vocabulary. So, and then we moved on to other parts. So that was one example of putting it in their hands. They have to be collaborative in deciding which words they were going to use.
We're going to shift a little bit, and we're just going to have Diane speak a little bit from the principal perspective, which is, you know, so she had 3 new people walking into her building, doing work with teachers that they weren't necessarily reporting to her about.
Thank you. I think you've heard some really, the examples we've heard so far really speak to the pieces that I wanted to talk about. I kind of wanted to do the metacognitive piece and talk about
what does that mean?
Sort of looking at it more holistically, and looking at, rather, you're hearing specific examples, so I wanted to talk about sort of the big picture that I see as the building, not only as a building principal, but as a you know, an instructional leader in this district, what I see happening too, so even beyond what's going on in my building. I wanted to just start back up and talk about, Liddy mentioned the team that met beginning 2 years ago, the design team, and I was fortunate to be a part of that team. And so starting from the very, very beginning, it was a deeply respectful process that I think permeates this whole model, and I think is so, so important. So it was a very collaborative process. It was a very intellectual process. Very, you know, we worked together as a learning community to figure out what we wanted for our district and where we needed to go to learn more about that. So, and I guess that deeply respectful process is what I see permeating, you know, coming out in every aspect. And you heard it just in the 2 stories you heard with Mary Beth and Carrie and Keith and Ann, just the really respectful way that coaches are working with teachers, you know, showing deep respect for them. And this is no small thing, because this is what we want. This is the kind of model we want for our kids too. So that's the important piece. And the collaborative piece, which is what we want. You know, Dr. Brown came to the district talking about moving us towards 21st century learning, and one of the most critical pieces of that is collaboration. So those are the pieces that I wanted to mention. So my view, what's happening in my building, what I see is all 3 coaches are there frequently. I don't know really actually who they're working with specifically when it comes to individual teachers. but I do know that they're working with our math PLC and our humanities PLC, and they're there regularly working with those two groups. And then I meet with, it's sort of in a PLC with my special ed teachers and AIS and AIS teachers, and we have invited the coaches to join us, and they're really helping us to think about school-wide culture in a deeper way. And so working with us to think about differentiation, how it's happening, where it's not happening in our school, reading articles together, having conversations together, thinking really about how to move that out and keep our focus on that, making sure that all kids are successful. The coaches have been at our weekly staff meetings. They've been at our all-school meetings, in our hallways. And again, I really, really appreciate that, because to me it says that they're wanting to learn the culture of the school, and that's very important for them to work effectively with teachers in the building. So those are a few of the things that I wanted to highlight about what I see happening in the building. And again, I think just that modeling of working respectfully alongside a teacher, they're like a guide, or a coach is a good model. And the student-centered focus of it. So you heard that really clearly in both of the examples. I was really struck by it with Mary Beth and Carrie, really looking at what the kids are doing. That's the focus of the work that the coaches are doing with the teachers, not at what the teacher is doing, but where are the kids, and where does Carrie want the kids to be? And so working alongside with her to help her meet her own goal with her kids. So it's a very elegant model, and I really see it working, and I'm really excited about that.
One thing I think that the instructional coaching really brings isn't just that reflective piece, because, like it was said, we can do that in a PLC, but being able to do that one-on-one with someone who's in your classroom so often is really amazing. But also, on top of that, the extra time. So I can give Mary Beth a few ideas and things that I want to do, and I've been planning all night for it, but she can take a little time and add to that, or say, hey, I looked at this standard and this standard, and I put this together, and why don't you come up with a lesson for that? And so just giving you someone else to work with a little bit more time who can look at things a little bit differently is great, is something that you can't necessarily do with a PLC with someone in your fourth grade team. So having someone there to support you in that way and say, these are your standards, and these are the parallels I see in third grade, fourth grade, or whatever the topic might be, I found to be the most helpful, and why I think it's not just about being reflective and changing the way you teach, it's really changing the way the students are thinking and learning. So.
Okay. We have one more example, and if you remember that tumbleweed that I showed you earlier, this example speaks to how that tumbleweed gets really messy. And so Julie Humble was working with Kathleen at South Hill, and I'd been hearing about it and wanted them to come speak tonight, and I came to South Hill to talk to them about what they were going to present. And we ended up having to really dissect it and graph it on a whiteboard. And so I just took a picture of that, and these are the pieces of it, and we're going to talk about it. And it's messy on purpose, because it's a little bit of a messy process, but an amazing outcome. So we're going to speak to each of these. They're small, but we want you to see how this goes.
Okay, so Kathleen came to me with the question, how do we get 6-year-olds to monitor their own progress and self-assess without creating anxiety? So I, outside of coaching, I'm a kindergarten teacher, and last year I did a little work with children monitoring their own progress during writing. So I just explained to her the process I went through with creating a rubric and using pictures to allow children to monitor their own progress while they were doing their writing, where they should be in kindergarten, where they need to work on. And Kathleen was really intrigued by that, but she was really concerned about the anxiety piece.
And also, like adding on to that too, it's important to have confidence when you do your work. And especially starting at 6 years old, I want to create that confidence in all of their work throughout the classroom. So I was worried that, you know, if the kids were to be using like a rubric or numbers to say where they're at with their writing or with their reading, that they would lose that confidence, and they would start comparing where they're all at, which then would, you know, could even create anxiety for the children as well. So that was my biggest concern.
And when you get into children monitoring their own progress at such a young age, it is really hard to know what that looks like and what will work. And so I had played with it for a couple of years, and I really wanted Kathleen to understand the power of it and where it could move kids at that young age, and really understanding the work that they're doing in the classroom. So I knew that I needed to meet Kathleen where she was at, and I knew she was uncomfortable. So we had a couple more meetings, and we talked about different parts of the first grade curriculum and where we could start with children looking at their own progress. So we went with heart words, which are, you know, the same as sight words. And that's the progress that we're working on right now currently. But that's not, oh, that's, sorry. So right now that's in progress. We're still working on that in the classroom, but that's really not one of the great things that came out of this cycle. So Kathleen's going to tell you a little bit about what happened with all of this work that we did together.
So because Julie and I had a conversation together about, you know, my question, how do we get 6-year-olds to monitor their own progress, she actually planted a seed in me to rethink about children assessing themselves, and in particular for writing. So it wasn't only just for the heart words, but how can we do it for writing? And just listening to her example and how she did it in kindergarten, where the kids would walk up to the different levels from 1 through 4 on examples of what the writing piece would look like at those different levels. So she planted that seed in me to rethink about writing time and how to get kids to reflect and to self-assess and then to self-monitor. So with that in mind, I kept on thinking, like, I want to go maybe to the next step. And how do I do that with first graders? And so what I decided to do was to create a rubric. So not, instead of kids going to a tabletop where the level 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 would be for a writing piece, the kids would have a rubric at their desk to do it independently. So they, you know, because I was concerned from the beginning about the kids comparing with others and losing that confidence. So they could do it independently. So I took that risk. The kids did it independently. But the most important piece I want to mention too about this rubric was it wasn't just me that created the rubric. I did it with the kids. At first I tried to do it, and then I'm like, wait a minute, I have to stop. The kids are telling me something. They said, because at first they said, okay, well, no details would be a level 1. No juicy details would be a level 1. And then the kids were like, what? That doesn't make sense. I can't, you know, for 1 detail, you get 1 point. Or 1, you know, you would get 1 on the rubric. I'm like, right, okay, I need to start listening to them. And it's all about experimenting, and that's what we learned with Dr. and yeah, it's about experimenting as well. So anyhow, we created this lovely rubric here together as a class, and so not only did the kids start independently using this rubric, I then started thinking about, okay, I'll take the next step and take a risk again and get the kids to start peer critiquing. So here in this picture right here is the kids peer critiquing using the rubric. And the level 4 for using conventions, the kids would use an exclamation mark, question mark, and a period in their writing. And so the little girl on the right-hand side here, she said to her peer, you know, I can't add a question mark or an exclamation mark in my writing. It wouldn't make sense. And the little boy on the left-hand side said, well, you could add speech bubbles. And so that's how she's able to
That's what she's doing.
And so that's what he's doing, is helping her with a speech bubble. Yeah.
Well, actually,
so,
there you go.
So this was a cycle that started with, you know, a broad how can I help first graders, self-assess, and they started slowly, and then it really built into a much larger piece with coaching.
So now the kids also have a self-monitoring booklet. So it's not only them using that rubric in that moment, but then they're going to go back and they're going to reflect on their growth. So that's the most important part. It's not about a number. It's not about assigning a number. It's the what's the process that they're taking with their writing. And yeah.
So that's a lot of information. If you have other questions or comments about that, we really here to talk, and you also have other experts.
What's up?
So I feel the love in the room between the coaches and the coachees, or whatever the word is. Does this model have to rely on a openness to explore, like you said, take the risk, learn, have that communication, and some of your colleagues may not be that open to that, and how does this coaching model work with the situation of, hey, this is my classroom, I know what I'm doing, kind of stay out, leave me alone? Is it just a time and relationships that are like what, I don't want to, this may not.
The question, as I would, this is a voluntary colleague to colleague, and Diane doesn't know who the coaches are working with on purpose, because this is not evaluative in any way. And so if a teacher wants to work with a coach, they approach a coach. We had a waiting list this fall of people, so we don't anticipate a lack of people that are interested in reflecting and growing. In fact, there are schools that don't have coaches that are knocking down my doors saying, give us some coaches, which is one of the reasons we're reconvening the district team to say, how do we move forward with this? But I think the teachers can speak to level of comfort and relationship.
Well, I mean, I signed up last year the day I heard that we were having that, and before I even knew I was going to be teaching this class, so I would say, but that is because I had a certain level of admiration for Keith already. I knew him, and I knew that I wanted to improve this class one way or the other. But I do think it is hard, because sometimes you have somebody, I mean, Keith a couple of times said things to me, I had to think about it, reflect on it, and think, wow, that does hurt a little bit, but he's so right. And it made me, because I think we all, teachers should reflect and do all the time, but having that sort of deep reflection, because you have somebody else saying, as Keith one of the times said to me, did you know one of your students was walking around like a chicken while you were teaching? No, you don't see everything that's going on in your classroom. You're so intent on trying to teach and so forth. So having someone say, have you seen this? Have you thought about that? Is huge. But yes, there has to be an awful lot of confidence.
What, a Spanish chicken?
Well, maybe he was in the Spanish chicken. That would be nice.
They had chickens. I did. I'll ask a question, Chris. Julie, you mentioned it. You're a kindergarten teacher, correct? And Keith, what's your main?
8th grade social studies.
Right, 8th grade social studies. You're out of the classroom for a while. How long are you out?
2 years.
2 years. So for those folks tuning in, so you're out for 2 years, and then you go back to your classroom, and then other teachers step up. What's the?
That's what we're looking to have as a cycle. And so as these teachers move back into the classroom, and I think you've heard they've already got things they want to go back to, then we're going to be opening it up to other teachers in the district that want to have this opportunity to see other schools, other classrooms, and help their peers.
And Keith just told me they were trained for 4 days to be coaches and then check in periodically. Yeah.
We have the 4 days of training this summer with a consultant from Expeditionary Learning. We've continued that training with a consultant. I've also networked with other instructional coaches in other districts, and we're trying to set up a Skype session with them. And
so we're continuing that training. That same training will happen as we get new coaches, so it'll be an ongoing training, but we'll also then be looking at our coaches as trainers as well. So it really feels building.
Chris, go ahead.
So everyone had an individual goal. Did everyone's goals start out as the same goal, or did they change?
I can speak to that. I think for all the teachers that I've worked with, I think the goal has, you kind of start off with this umbrella, but then a big piece of unpacking what it will take to get your students there is a lot of incremental steps that build to it, and sometimes uncovering, as you dig deeper, something that's even more pressing. So in my experience, at least with the teachers that I've worked with, it does change as you go along the path, and the tumbleweed goes around and the arrows might go different ways and back and forth. But that's actually part of the strength of it, is realizing what the incremental pieces are to get student achievement to move forward. Yeah.
Jake, what?
So how many teachers at any one time is a coach connected and working with?
It really depends. I'll let these guys speak to that.
I mean, right now I am working with 4 teachers, but it depends on how you're working with them. If you're working with them individually or in a PLC. So PLCs could contain 2 to 4 teachers.
And also, they might be working with someone just like for one period a day, or you might be coming in every day.
I mean, it just really depends on how intensive anything is and what happens. It's been, I think we started out with a real idea of it would be 4 to 6 teachers, and the cycles would take this long, and what everybody figured out in the first week was that that's not going to happen, and you just have to look at how many times, you know, everything, what's really exciting about it is everything is tailored to the teacher. I mean, we talk about this being individualized professional development, and so, you know, some teachers want observations or whatever the goal is might necessitate several observations a week, while others, you know, might be a planning session, 1 observation a week. So it really depends on that. And if I can go back a little bit too, it also, we got trained for 4 days and we have check-ins, but we're also being pushed by the job itself to get more professional development ourselves too. So a lot of times, you know, we'll have these conversations with our peers, and then we'll have to go back and either, you know, do reading or collaborate with others or go to professional development. I certainly didn't come into this school year knowing very much about the ENO boards, but you know, that's one of the parts of what a lot of the teachers were interested in doing, was incorporating that technology in a meaningful way in their classroom to make it truly collaborative and more than just whiteboards.
Currently working with 6 teachers, and Steph, I'm going to go back and address one of your questions at the same time. The next cycle at Caroline starts in January, and 3 of the teachers I'm currently working with are spinning over into January. I have 4 new teachers coming on board, 3 of whom I would never have expected to want to work with me. That's right around the middle of November, just came and said, I've got a goal now. I want you to come in. So I think it's going to, as people experience it and hear about it more and more, as the word spreads through the different places, different schools, and our colleagues, I think people are going to recognize, everyone is going to recognize the value of this. And maybe not everyone will invite us in, but a lot more are this year already than I ever expected.
Can I ask the superintendent or the people in this building? I mean, if what I'm hearing is this kind of individualized or small group, you know, 6, 7 people at a time that are being coached, just from a resource point of view, you know, at the district level, which is what kind of board members usually deal with, is it realistic kind of to have that model where all of our teachers are receiving that type of personalized professional development? and you know, even though it's great, you know, I'd love to have a lawyer coach say, hey, you're doing this wrong and that wrong, and work with. I'd love it, and I'd be expressing a lot of the same feelings that are in the room, but just from the top kind of budget type things, you know, and is there a shift in terms of, okay, since we may be shifting to this model, you know, are we pulling other things that we had been doing, you know, resource-wise to focus on this, and I mean, what's your sense of that, and where are we going with, you know, kind of the resource idea of, for systems point of view, how do we sustain something like this if it's really getting at, you know, having teachers learn their craft better?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, and thanks for it. What you're saying is much more than dollars and cents or X's and O's. It's more about a culture shift, and this is a model that's shifting a culture. I want to thank the board for taking a chance on us. A year and a half we came to you, and we asked you to allow us to reflect and experiment. You said we wanted to think about professional development differently, and we thought instructional coaching would be the approach that would generate some significant results for us. So we put a process in place, which you've heard about, that was informed by research, best practice, and as you see, some of the best thinkers in our organization. And what you're seeing now is the results of that great work. That now needs to be scaled to continue the culture shifting. And then looking at the educators, I want to thank the educators for being here. When we talk about doing something that's new, shifting a culture, innovative, and something that will serve young people, that causes some angst. Even though we think that's what we all be thinking about all the time, what we do know is that folks, oftentimes when you try to go after those things and that in a very innovative way that's student-centered, people don't like it. And I can look at the book, they may want to weigh in here. I'm sure each one of them have been looked at or been questioned about this model and this approach in one way or another. And they've withstood that. And they've now persevered to do this for the best interest of young people, which is shifting a culture. So as we continue to grow this, maybe we double the number of coaches, we have next year triple the number of coaches, but each year we shift the culture quite a bit more. And in time, this PLC approach and these conversations will just be common across the organization from grade level to grade level, classroom to classroom, school to school, where right now, as you described it, and as we see it, it happens in pockets with some trained adults. I've gone through this process in another district when you, I think it was Rob who asked about the cycle of teachers going back into the classroom after 2 years. That's even unique. And seeing the faces of the teachers at the table who were excited about going into the classroom again after this experience, and other places where this has occurred, the folks who do this job look to go into administration. That's just how it has happened in the past, but we were careful about this process, and we framed it in a way where we were hoping to build capacity amongst teachers. Some of the training that our educators at this table have received has been some outstanding training, which is going to help them in many, many ways as they go back into PLC conversations, back in front of young people, and now helping other coaches come into the fold, which will build that sustainability that we're talking about now. This is a very long-winded answer, I believe, but I'm hoping I'm touching on a lot of different things. But mostly, it's more about culture shifting than it is about dollars and cents or X's and O's right now. And I think we're feeling it and seeing it.
Well, let me get you off of culture and ask you about dollars and cents and get a sense of, you know, I can't tell my client, pay my fee, and then, oh, here's my coach, pay his fee. I mean, there's a point where, you know,
you have to pay for the coach.
Yeah,
you have to pay.
Right. Yeah. So, you know, that I'm just trying to get a sense of, you know, just broad, not, you know, line items, but just, you know, the success that's expressed here. You talk about scaling it up. What are your thoughts or your team's thoughts on where we get money, you know, instead of just being additive? You know, you talk about doing things differently. Well, how are we going to pay for this differently? Because you pulled out 6, 7, 8, I don't know how many coaches we have, but they're not in the classroom. You know, we want 25 more. How are we going to pay for that? What are your thoughts on how we, you know?
We were able to find some efficiencies last year to do much of what we did this year cost neutral. There was just a minimal increase. Dr. Landau, and I hope Amanda's proud of me when I say this, Dr. Landau and I have done some additional analysis. What we hope to do next year's approach to this, it would be to include 4 or 5 more coaches at a bit of a cost neutral level. But we may want to do more than that. So that's a conversation that we're very early in the budget process. So as we think about the budget, we look for efficiencies in other areas. We may be able to grow this not only twofold, but significantly more next year. based on where we come out. But this is very early to put.
Since we're in the roundtable, anybody else got any ideas? Jason, Lori, anybody?
One of the things that I think is unique about the model is it's not so much that the knowledge stays only with that one classroom teacher. When a coach impacts one teacher's classroom and that teacher participates in a content area PLC, maybe a vertical K-12 PLC, or maybe a certain grade level PLC, that knowledge not only, it may directly go with that one teacher, but through the model of PLCs throughout the whole district, that knowledge is also being shared with other colleagues. In other places where I've worked, where coaching was more of, a mandate, where there was a position in a school and every teacher was required to go through them, one of the things that Liddy talked about was the principal didn't necessarily know which teachers were being worked with, and there are pros and cons to that. At first, like, that's different from anything I've worked with, but because that trust factor is there with the teachers and the coach, the motivation is a little bit different, sort of the weight off of their shoulders in terms of it being evaluative, sort of opens up the relationship to be something very different maybe than in other models. So I think, is it efficient? No, not necessarily, but how the knowledge fuses from that pair to the team, to throughout the whole school and throughout the whole district, I think it's really building capacity, and teacher leadership in terms of learning does not have to come from some external being, but it is changing the culture in terms of how we learn together through things.
The only piece I would add to that is that culture shift that can't be underplayed. Looking at the three folks that I worked very closely with for a long time at Boyden, and having some very in-depth conversations. We talk about this at the board level and executive level a lot in terms of groups of students that continue to be underserved in our population. This systematically is going after higher levels of engagement. We're seeing the success, and it is systematically shifting how we've been able to approach engaging students that haven't been successful in the past and are seeing that success. So when we talk about the expansion of it, the priority begins when we talk about this next initial year, and Dr. Brown's kind of hinted at this. We're really talking about trying to get instructional coaches all throughout the elementary level, and then maybe being a year away, we've already got the middle schools there. The high school has a peer observation model that's taking fire and igniting a community, and I see a rejuvenation, a resurgence in a lot of our educators throughout the district. So we see this happening at a lot of levels. So it's a pretty exciting work, and again, the culture shift is what we're really after.
Follow up on Seth's comments. Dr. Brown, how many coaches do we have now?
7 coaches.
7 coaches.
7 coaches in 7 buildings.
And it was understood by the board, I'm quite sure it was understood by the board that this was really a pilot project. And Matt's talked about it, that, how to scale it, how to push this forward. But starting at that level, frankly, because I think it was thought to be budget neutral at that point, but then eventually an investment would have to be made. And that goes back to Seth, who's going to pay for it. Again, we're going to, if this is a successful model, Jason, if we are able to engage all students, and if this is a key tool to do that, then we're going to have a conversation with the community about what's it going to take to support that. And because the community supports everything that we do, and so how it's going to work in the budget as we move forward. Go ahead, Jude.
Which schools do not have coaches?
BJM and Fall Creek, Cuba Heights, and the high school. And the high school.
Right.
Okay. And some have two.
Well, each elementary school has one coach, and they have a partner coach that they meet with, but we really found, like, when we came to you in August, I think we said that they were going to be working at both schools. We quickly found that to develop those relationships, they needed to be at one school. So in the elementary schools, they are at one school, but they partner with another coach to meet and coach each other, as well as meeting with me. At the middle schools and at LACS, the 3 coaches go to all 3 schools, and they split their time, and they have
Question from Ned.
Yeah. There's been a lot of talk about student engagement and keeping everything student-oriented. How much effort has been made to reach out to students and get their feedback on both this process and just their feedback for teachers in general and how they learn best?
Yeah, that's one of the things that we're working on as we're getting initial data on just student achievement. We're so new in this. I have a feeling that there are a lot of kids that are at least curious and have been told. So I'm not sure how you've explained it to your kids why Keith is in there.
They're just unhappy that he's not there anymore. Where's that tall bald guy?
That is part of the plan. That is part of the plan because, you know, if we're not meeting the needs of kids, it's one thing to show a graph, but it's another to actually talk to them.
Connor, go ahead.
Speaking to that.
Connor first, thank you.
How are these coaches chosen to be coaches? Was it totally elected by them, or are they asked to do it? Also, are they receiving the same salary they would as teachers? Or are they receiving a salary increase as a coach?
They are teachers on special assignments, so they have their same pay that they would if they were in the classroom. We had an open interview process that any teacher in the Ithaca City School District could interview. We actually ended up having so many teachers apply that it took us twice as long, and we had such a hard time choosing that we ended up having 2 rounds of interviews so that we could really get to know the applicants, and we put them through a couple of scenarios and asked them to do some work for us as a part of that process. So it was an interview process.
Go ahead, Karen.
And Ned, right? Yeah. Thinking about students, I often kind of give a little post-it on my table and ask them to kind of write what they like, what they don't like, what I can do better. And we've talked about critiquing what's the best way to kind of do that. You don't want to say this is awful, or, you know, being constructive with it, so we do that. But working with 4th grade and our instructional coach, Mary Beth, in art we've done mostly writing for 7 weeks, and we haven't really created an artwork, and not one kid has said, are we going to do art? I mean, they're writing in art and talking about it and fully engaged. So that in itself is telling me that they're enjoying what they're doing.
Anything else? Do we want to wrap it there? Is that a good place to stop?
Thank everyone for coming yet again. Also want to thank Lily for the live streaming this. She's ready with tweeting. And we have a couple of questions. Thank you.
We have a few more items, and certainly those folks who don't have to be involved in those items can probably step out. And, I'm going to think of ways to use
coaching.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, big success. Yeah, that's great.
Thanks, Keith. Thank you. Excellent. Excellent.
Clear the room.
Yeah, definitely. Interesting, exciting stuff. Thanks, Danielle. We still have a quorum? Yes.
I guess we took a break.
Yeah, that's what you call it. But, we'll,
Definitely different
we're going to go ahead and continue, and I'm going to figure out how to use metacognitive in a sentence someday, but I don't think I can I don't think I can even pronounce it. So,
you just did.
that was the only time. So. metacognitive
Yes,
thing. And Judy Mack, since you're talking about that sort of thing, there was a policy on my agenda, and it is the first reading of equivalence and instructional staff and materials. And it was in the Dropbox, and it's fairly short, and it looks like it was required. Or Pat can weigh in as well.
No, I can do it. I don't think Pat was there.
I was not, that's why I'm like, why is this policy up here? I had to miss a policy meeting.
More academia stuff, I assume, but we won't get into that, Pat.
I was probably traveling for.
So you're not going to fake it then?
No, this is sort of an important one. Well, it's a very important one because Lori weighed in, and this has to do with Title I money, that the district has to treat all its schools and children equally, or even add a little of district money to Title I schools, and then the Title money is put on top of that. The district cannot use the Title I money to equalize. It has to be on top of the money already that would be given to every school.
It's in addition to.
Yes.
And remind me, the amount of Title I money we get
is minuscule.
Yeah, it's nothing. Yeah, it's nothing.
But we still have to have this. And it's been going down every year from what I can get.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's really good to get.
Yeah. It's less than $1 million.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's a rounding error in our budget.
So there's one piece that Judy talked about is the supplemental funding, but the comparability report is something that all districts have to turn in, and it's basically ensuring that Title I schools are given at least an equal ratio of students to teachers or students to school resources as non-Title I schools.
Yeah.
Great.
No problem.
It's a necessity, and it just has to be said. Could I have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
J. seconds.
Is it
first reading or second?
First.
So it's the regular, we're going to vote to vote on it a second time?
Yeah.
All right. All in favor? And you all in policy can determine whether there's any language to change, but yeah, it looks fine. Seth is, so we still have Seth's around here, so there's Seth. So, so we're really down to the last item, and that is item C, and Brad, why don't you go ahead?
We spoke last meeting about new routes. Well, actually, we spoke about the last couple of meetings. Requested a meeting with CSI, the Charter School Institute. I don't believe we've heard anything back from them at all on that. We're waiting to see whether they re-charter new routes or not. We discussed at the last meeting some issues with their data, some issues with their application, you know, whether they're compared to us or not. We're at, Dr. Brown, we're about an 89 or 90% graduation rate. They're at 67%. Pretty significant difference between the two. What I'd like us to consider, and I would move that we instruct the superintendent to work with our attorneys to prepare a challenge, an Article 78 challenge to CSI's rechartering of new routes if they do actually go ahead with a recharter. So this is just to be ready on the if they do recharter it, whether we would like to challenge it or not. And if someone seconds it, I'd like to speak to it.
Judy seconds.
You know, we had a little discussion the last time. I hope some of you went and looked at their board meeting video. It's pretty telling. Here we had a wonderful discussion tonight about education, children, teaching, engaging students. They had a board meeting about institutional survival and no discussion about children. Their way to consider increasing the graduation rate is to change the admission requirements. Basically, the discussion was we need to select children who we know are going to succeed. Yeah. We're going to pre-select in order to have them succeed. Completely contravention of the law.
Well, and they're also going to select in the beginning of semesters and
Only, yeah.
nobody.
So much for being a public school. We're not going to take them when they come. We're going to take them only at the beginning of the term. To me, it argues that it's in violation of the charter law. The fact that they're not discussing innovative education, they're discussing an institution and how they need it to survive, not how children need it to survive. And so I believe that's counter to the law as well. I would propose that we, and that's why I move that we at least begin to prepare an Article 78 challenge. Article 78 is a challenge to any state proceeding, administrative proceeding. That's what CSI would be doing in a rechartering. It would allow us to challenge that, and it would have to be decided in a court. We'd be asking a judge to look at the procedure and whether the procedure they followed met the law or didn't meet the law. We're not seeking anything from them other than that the Charter School Institute follow the law, and that is not renew the charter given the set of facts that's there now. So that's where I'm at. I think we should be ready to do that if the Charter School Institute moves ahead with a recharter.
Do we want to make that public that we are?
I think we just did. I think we just did.
That's the other room there.
Yeah, I think it's pretty.
Yeah. You forgot to kick me out.
Would you like to repeat that publicly?
No, just did.
Yeah, the motion is to have our attorneys prepare a Article 78 challenge to a charter renewal if granted by the Charter School Institute.
The resolution that the board passed 2 or 3 meetings ago was to request a meeting with
the Charter School Institute, and they haven't responded. So
right, was there one communication, Danielle, at all with them?
I think Danielle followed up.
You followed up?
Yeah, the office to offer dates for a visit, and I haven't heard back.
Okay. Yeah, right. I know that you reached out to them.
No one would say
multiple times. Right?
You'd hate to think a public servant would meet with the public.
Yeah.
But we
pays their taxes.
are aware that she was in Elmira, if not last week, the week before, at a meeting in Elmira. So she does get out of Albany.
Request.
Right, a month after our request does get out of Albany. It was in Elmira, but certainly chose not to meet with this body or this district while she was in the area. But
I have a question for Brad. If we file this, does the new routes, are they in abeyance? I mean, they continue.
Yeah, they continue. You're challenging the charter.
But the charter is put off until
No.
they can go through.
You'd have to have a judge decide that. We can't. We'd be asking for that.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean we get it.
Okay. So the charter does nothing to the day-to-day operation?
Not initially, no. I mean, we'd be asking them to not allow the charter to go forward for next school year.
Okay.
Whether a judge would or not, we'll wait and see. And we don't know yet whether the Charter School Institute is going to renew the charter 5 years, 1 year.
A 1 year.
They could give them a 1 year probationary charter. We don't know where they stand, but
they do that all the time.
But they've asked for a 5-year recharter, and I want to be prepared to challenge that.
Okay.
But there's no action we can take, obviously, until CSI takes an action.
Right.
Go ahead, Jim.
I'm in support of this. I think it's a great idea. Thank Brad for bringing it up. And the reason that I'm in support is because I'm not an expert in charter school law, charter school chartering, and I think that we've had many questions raised. We've got concerns that we are not being able to have addressed, and we have limited ability to do anything. And so I welcome having a lawyer take a look at what the procedure is that they're to follow, sure that they are following it and see in fact if there's somewhere that well, that's the biggest thing, is to review what the law is, what the procedure is supposed to be, and that they're following it, because we just have very limited ability to have any input in any of this, and so it warrants a legal, at this point, unfortunately, it warrants, I think, a legal examination of what we can and can't do, and so on and so forth.
I'm also in support of Brad's motion. I would just like, just to clarify, people who are interested in watching the video of the New Roots Charter School board meeting, in which they discuss these rather draconian restrictions on their admissions policy, many of which are patently illegal. Only one of which was adopted officially. Just look on YouTube for New Roots Charter School 11-14-13 board meeting, RE potential change in admissions policy, and other. I watched it after our last board meeting and was just absolutely astounded by the total lack of regard for the welfare of any single student in that school, and also the fact that the changes to admissions policies they were proposing would have barred or removed almost every student I've heard who attended New Roots School, and that there was no thought or compassion about those children. There was not one word in that 45-minute discussion about how to increase student performance, involvement, success. Not one word about the students. It was all about them and their school and how to exclude as many of these students as possible so that their school would survive. It was really appalling.
As everyone knows, I love a good fight, and I love a good legal fight especially, and I love interesting legal arguments and all, but you know, I'm not excited about this one at all, and in fact I think I'm strongly opposed to it, because I'm on the Ithaca City School District Board of Education, and what I'd like to be about are the good conversations we just had here and what we're doing in our buildings, and I'd recommend that we, rather than take this fight on, which will distract us to a certain extent, there's a strong organization or group out there who strongly opposes New Roots, and has been really a good, healthy, you know, in our government, you know, open system, a healthy watchdog of this new charter school that's been in our community, and I'd be more than happy to let them to continue the fight that they've been engaged in with this school for the past 5 years since it started, and oftentimes they come to our meeting and update on this, but I think that's what there's nothing unique about us as an entity that we have to take this fight on, and I don't see any reason why the group or other groups or individual citizens who want to take this fight on can file this Article 78. My sense is that's a you know, I don't know if stretch is the right word, but that legal argument is going to be tough, but I think that group would be more than willing to carry that load, and if, you know, they wanted to take that on. So the distraction, and, you know, I'm here to serve our kids and work on the work we're trying to do here.
The only contradiction I'd make in that argument is that those kids are our kids. And I think we owe it, because they're in our entity, to those kids, and that's what we're about. and we see disservice to them.
Okay.
And we are the home district of New Roots School, and I'm frustrated by the total lack of response by the Charter School Institute to questions raised within this community, and I think we are, we are another entity that it may be a little less easy for the Charter Schools Institute to ignore. I guess I'm just a pie-eyed optimist, which no one ever says, but I actually expected that some aspect of state government would be responsive to the call from the district for clarification, considering is the laws that they made put us in this position, and I think that we ill-serve the public if we look the other way. That's just my personal feeling.
Well, I mean, that's just it, and that's my main point, is that the law was written to exclude districts from having control over charter schools. I mean, that's the whole point of having these independent schools that function outside of the normal channels of the educational system. They have different rules. They're not required to be us and follow what we are required to follow. So it's the law ignores us because it's designed to ignore us.
Well, we don't have any direct control over them, but the law requires that they outperform us.
Thank you.
And I still take issue with the report that the principal and superintendent submitted to the Charter Schools Institute, and the apparently lack of critical oversight that the Charter Schools Institute is giving to probably not only this one, but many charter schools, and this is the only one that we have any call for input.
Go ahead. Yeah, Pat covered the main point. The main is that it isn't, Seth, I'm not asking to have any control over it. I'd rewrite the law, but that's a whole different issue. Right now, we have no control, and I understand that. But they are also to follow the law, and they're not. From my perspective, that school charters are created with a limited life to show that they can do something better. They've not demonstrated that, and I don't understand why they'd even be considered for a recharter. The idea of the charter law was to let them experiment. If it worked, great, let's all learn from that, and if it didn't work, they're closed, you move on. And that's the part I want them to follow, that procedure of, well, it was a great try, didn't work, let's move on.
Well, Brad, that's just it. The idea that, they were given this 5-year period to perform at a certain level, and for whatever reason, if the Charter School Institute says, we're going to give you another 5 years because we think there's potential there. Just like we thought there was potential when you had no history and just a plan on paper. They say, you know what, in these 5 years, in our judgment, you did okay. We think you're looking better. That's a hell of a thing to try to challenge with Article 78, because it's, and then because look, you know what's going to happen.
Oh, sure.
We're going to be in that room next door, hearing from the attorneys. Here's the update on the Article 78, and then we're not talking about our instructional coaching models, or and that's, and for that long shot. You know what? Someone else can take that long shot and run with it, and we can focus on the work we're trying to do here. And that's where I'm coming from in this whole thing.
I get your point. But,
the resolution on the table right now is to prepare some of the work for 78. Obviously, if
we'd have to vote again.
Obviously, we would vote with a full board.
We are
at some point. Well,
it's a public meeting.
They'd have to create the charter first.
Yeah.
They would have to be
They'd have to be
rechartered first.
Right.
Well, my point is, whether it's a full board or not in the future, we would have to take another action in the future to actually go ahead with the Article 78.
Yep.
Right. I mean, this, just to be clear, this does not authorize
Lays the groundwork.
the district to go ahead and do the 78.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, that's
right. But there's no action to challenge it.
Right. So when that time comes, then the board would have to make a determination at that point.
Rob, can I just clarify?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I'm trying to clear. Yeah.
I don't know what the language is exactly, but it is something to the effect of we want them to now prepare something so that it will be ready.
Right.
Well, what's
the wording that I have is to prepare a challenge to a charter renewal if granted by CSI.
Could we
so this
just tweak that a little?
Yeah.
Just because.
What's your suggestion?
How about we vote on this when because we have 40 days to file the Article 78. How about we, because we're going to spend money on someone to look at this now.
Okay.
Why not
They're
just
retainer. They're not.
Yeah, that's the only concern is if we're voting to do something.
That we don't do.
Yeah, and then the work is going to be shoddy because I assume the Charter School Institute has to vote on something, and then the attorney drafting it will have to take their reasoning for the supporting, the extension, and then say the reasoning doesn't stand up or something. So, just if we get them working, they'll just be spinning their wheels.
My point was that I thought the board would have to take another action.
We would.
Right.
We would.
Just to be clear that this was not that action, but a different.
Right.
Jay, go ahead.
And I'm good for some clarity and some legal research. So I support it as written, not to go necessarily to go forward, but to come back with a brief, a review of an article being taken and the arguments pro and con and the strength of them. Because as I said earlier, I don't feel that I'm qualified to know exactly what the questions are at this point. So not an extensive. This isn't to build the case, to have the final case. In my mind, that's the way I was viewing this.
No, I'm not changing it. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take a friendly amendment.
No, that's.
I like it the way it is. I think we need to take. We've been ignored. We need to make an affirmative step.
So we've gone around the room several times. So resolution is as Danielle read it.
Can you give it to us one more time then?
Yeah.
Motion is made to instruct the superintendent to work with the district attorney to prepare an Article 78 challenge to the new route charter renewal if granted by the Charter Schools Institute. Did I have that right?
Does that mean if it's granted, prepare it, or prepare it?
Prepared in readiness.
Yeah, which is it?
To be approved.
Yeah, no, I know it's going to be approved.
Eventually, they'll have to come to be approved. So.
But are you asking? Are they to prepare?
I didn't put a time frame on it.
No.
Yeah.
Are you asking if we're being proactive and assuming that it'll be approved, so have one ready? Is that what we're saying?
That's where I was. I want that affirmative statement out there.
Yes, I do too. That's why I asked you.
So I don't know if the if it's approved is in the correct spot.
We want the affirmative statement that we're going to file this possibly.
Right.
If they approve it.
If they move ahead.
No changes to the language on the resolution right now, correct? All in favor? That's, I guess, going to be Judy, Max, Rob, Brad, Jay, and Pat. Those against is going to be Seth.
Abstain.
Chris is abstaining.
Sean's not here, so
I took that one for Sean.
Chris pulling a Sean. We appreciate that. So Well, there's a resolution, so, but we can flesh that out a little bit. The other business by board members, etc. I did ask Danielle. I was wondering about the January 7th and January 21st monthly voting meetings. Our policy kind of says the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays.
What happened? You know, I don't know. I think that it was just based off of last year's schedule. And not having created a schedule, I just assumed there's a reason for it to be the 1st and 3rd, but it doesn't look like this year that there is. So just wanted some direction from you all if you'd like to keep it as printed in the schedule for the 1st and 3rd Tuesdays in January, or change it to the way that it should flow as the 2nd and 4th Tuesday in January.
If I have an opinion, I would prefer that it be the 14th and the 28th. Frankly, I think it would be okay if we had a little bit of time after the Christmas break, New Year's, and then get the agenda set for the 14th and the month, and frankly, probably the plan of work. Selfishly, I will be traveling on the 21st, and I will not be here, so Seth would have to run the meeting.
For the play?
Travel.
I thought you don't travel. You don't leave.
No, I'm not supposed to say. See, Judy said I was going to get in trouble, so I can't say. So I will be out of town.
Wow. Sounds like a vacation. Yeah. What's going on? Next thing you know, Lavelle will take a vacation.
It could be business, it could be anything, but we're a destination that I have to go to.
So moving the January meetings to the 14th and 28th?
Works for me.
I'm okay.
I don't care.
You're okay,
That's
fine.
fine, yeah. That's consistent with our policy, so
Yeah.
we could
And
say that.
we have to be consistent with policy because it's a law, right? It must be a law. Right?
It's a policy.
It's a policy.
To be consistent.
That is
It's a policy, right? It's a law. It's a policy. So that was the big thing. Anything else? And of course, well, some of the other meetings.
You should move those.
Your other meetings might change a little bit.
Can we move that to the 27th? Sean will be back in the country and available. Can we go back to the Monday before? If we're moving the board meetings, Chris, move the finance committee now to the Monday before the 2nd meeting of the month, and Sean will be back, so we're not conflicting with that.
So we'll move to January.
We'll move the January meeting to the 27th.
That works.
We agreed to the 15th. Well, yeah, an odd day the other day, because based on, we thought the 2nd meeting was going to be on the 21st, and the 20th is a holiday, so we were, Sean was out of the country, we were backing up.
Yeah, there's right. Frankly, multiple reasons why the 21st probably is the greatest day. Martin Luther King is that Monday, correct? Yeah.
That's what happened.
That's why we're moving finance.
Right.
Okay.
So any other meetings that flow from there, need changes, obviously we'll let Danielle know, but Danielle will amend our calendar and let everybody know out in the world that we were meeting at different days. So
when can we come and wave you off?
I'm not saying anything about anything, because Judy said my Judy would say I'm already in big trouble because I had to bring it up. So I tried to do just me and Danielle, off-site, but Danielle insisted that I bring it to the board, and so so it's all Danielle's fault. So those were the big items.
So moved.
Okay, so we're going to rectify our calendar. Hockey this weekend, choir tomorrow, basketball tomorrow.
Basketball team is good. Really looked good in the second half.
Well,
Friday, Enfield breakfast.
Right, Enfield breakfast Friday morning. That's always the big crowd.
Yep.
Don't feel like to eat because they're
that big breakfast for
yeah.
I didn't know that.
Is there anything else? I think we're good, right? Well, we're all set.
Thank you.
Have a great Christmas, everyone.
Thanks for these cookies. Awesome.
Good cookies.